to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband, take care of your children, and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity because the future is in y'all's hands. Young people, all Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his father, God Allah. I'm going to move on. This here segment here, before I conclude, I have a light little piece, man, to do, but this little section here, I'm going to step aside and let Brother Omari step up, please, and do the Quran questions for Moorish Americans, known better as the 101s. Islam. Dun, 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 dun. No, I'm gonna let you have a pass this time. I'm not gonna mess with you this time because Aki, you've done so much good work. I don't have the heart to bother you this time. I don't have the heart to mess. Huh?
They actually closed an exit on us, and we had to go way down.
No. Brother, you are taking exception to this time.
Thank you.
Brother, you need my glasses?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Islam family.
Islam.
First I rise, give all praises to the illustrious. Oh, I'm sorry again. I rise, give all praises to Father God Allah, great architect of the universe. I want to give honors to his prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I want to give honors to Jimmy Sheikh of Temple Number 10, Asbury Park. I want to give honors to Sheikhs, give honors to all members in attendance. Islam.
Islam.
I'm going to read the 101 Quran questions for Moorish children. Number 1, who made you?
Allah.
2, who was Allah?
Allah is the Father of the universe.
3, can we see him?
No.
4, where's the nearest place we can meet him?
In the heart.
5, who was Noble Drew Ali?
He's Allah's prophet.
6, what is a prophet?
Prophet. Yes.
7, what is the duty of a prophet?
Save the nations from the wrath of Allah.
8, who was the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America?
Noble Drew Ali.
9, what year was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded?
1913 AD.
10, where?
Newark, New Jersey.
11, where was Noble Drew Ali born?
The state of North Carolina, 1886.
Islam. 12, what is his nationality?
Moorish American.
13, what is your nationality?
Moorish American.
14, why are we Moorish Americans?
Because we're descendants of Moroccans and born in Islam.
I just want to stop there and just have a quick build. As all of us coming through the temple, when we explain to people out on the street that we're Moorish Americans, how do we explain it? If someone says, I never heard of that, how can you further explain to me what is a Moorish American? What would you say?
I need that for the floor. I know what I would say, but I want to hear what y'all would say.
Nobody?
Well, then, okay.
Flying go.
Oh, okay, Islam go?
Yes.
Islam.
First, I rise and I give all praise to Allah, Father of the universe. I give honors to Noble Drew Ali. Give honors to the Grand Sheikh. Give honors to Sheikh Hooper. Give honors to all the Sheikhs.
Islam, brother. I want to see you.
And honors to anything pertaining to Islam.
Islam. Honest to you.
Islam. Thank you. You said what?
How would you explain the nationality of Moorish American to someone that didn't know what it was?
I would say that my nationality, Moorish American, came from my my prophet, Noble Drew Ali.
Mhm.
And he's the one that made that, and he made that nationality known and proclaimed to the nations, so that the Negroes, people call themselves Negroes, Black, colored, African American, which you see all around in North America, that they would have a nationality and no longer have to go by these names that allude to slavery or come from slave holders or anything like that. This is the reason why, I give honors to my prophet, Drew Ali, because he brought that to us to uplift fallen humanity, and that's the reason why I would say he brought it to us, and we needed it the most because we're going through a lot of stuff, hurting each other. That's what I would say.
It's on. U.S.A.
I'm going to hold my answer. Let Mark.
Oh, Islam, brother Mark.
Islam. Praises to Prophet, Father of the universe, Allah. Give praises to His Prophet, my grand sheep of the temple, the sheep is, and all other sheeps and all of the members.
Islam. Honest to you.
Islam. I address that question in such a way where I tell them, well, we're connected through the bloodline, right? And then they say, well, how so? I said, well, our ancestors, our forefathers and foremothers were already dwelling on these lands.
Oh, you just took my answer, brother. That's it. I ain't talking now.
So now, when the Europeans came in contact, they did a lot of misconstrued, catastrophic things dealing with the Renaissance, the Reconstruction period in history. So it's not taught to us the contact that we had with the people that was here prior to, which was our ancestors, right? They were here prior to. Europeans came, they have some connection, they have some contact. The European came with a certain aim and goal in mind that they had put forth through, the Rome and Greeks. They had a mission to come here to do certain things, which in the Reconstruction period of history is not being taught to us what the damage and the destruction that they did and how they reconstructed history. So we have to go back and do some studying as far as we need to change the literature that what they have already taught us. Because most of the time what we have been learned is, say, a regurgitated history that they came up with. And so then it leads on to other
Islam. Very well said, brother. Islam. Very well said. U.S.A. you want to tell
Even though, he
home?
took part of my answer, but I'm going to bring it home. That's what I would say, like if a brother or sister, but I have been approached like that, well, how, I don't understand what nationality is. I said, well, before things were the way they are now, like as you said, when the Pelican nations of Europe came over here, they came over here with a mission. Their mission was to conquer these lands and to enslave the people of these lands and to steal their resources. And we are one of the first people on the planet before any people were on this planet. So, but they swore a blood oath to never let us learn about who we are. So that's why they reconstruct history and things are the way they are now. And it gave us nicknames like Black, African American, Negro, and etc. These people don't exist because never in the history of the human family has there ever been any Black people. We the ones who educated and taught the whole entire world. So you need to think it over.
I think all the answers were definitely in lieu of the prophet and more science. But then also I want to ask that when we explain some of these things, can we also go into like history and law? Because our people have an issue with, like Mark, everything you said was true, right? But now someone that never studied, now you want to give them something somewhere where they can go find these truths. So like what I would do, like if someone had asked me, it says, so 14 is, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America. So now what I would do, just as a quick example, is like maybe go through the Treaty of Peace and Friendship and find out how it says that we are connected to this land, and then we're born here in the continent of America. That's Moorish Americans, right? And then also you can go into like the proclamation by what's his name, Rahm Emanuel, who had written out that this ancient Canaanites, Hittites are the modern day Moorish Americans. So then you have physical evidence to show people today on how we say what we're saying is true.
Right.
Islam.
I am you right on point with that, and I am I'm working on my artillery.
Islam.
I'm on the same
Islam.
All right, brother, man, you did it right.
Yeah, you were right. You were right. You totally right with everything you said. But that's the next level. Was like I said, if you was talking to a complete stranger that had no idea about any of these histories, Islam. 15. For what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded?
For uplifting for humanity.
16. How did the Prophet begin to uplift the Moorish American?
By teaching them to be themselves.
17. What is our religion?
Islamism.
18. Is that a new or is that an old time religion?
Old time religion.
That can be another one to explain to people as well, because our religion. So some people say, "Oh, we Muslims, or you Sunni, or you Shiite," and I say, "Well, I'm a Mohammedan, or I follow Islamism." And then some people say, "Well, what is that? I never heard of that." So that's another studying opportunity to go into the dictionary and ask them to look up Islamism, because it is in a dictionary.
Yes.
And it's one of the most predated versions of Islam prior to Shiite and Sunni.
Right.
19. What kind of flag is the Moorish?
It was a red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center.
20. What do the 5 points represent?
Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice.
21. How old is our flag?
It is 50,000 years old.
And Mark, that's another reason, Mark, how not to cut you off, but that's how we can add into the treaty within the flag of how this is all ours and our land and how this all belongs to us. 22. Which is our holy day?
Friday.
23. Why?
But Friday, when man was formed in the flesh, and Friday, man departed out of the flesh.
24. Who was Jesus?
He's prophet of Allah.
25. Where was he born?
In Bethlehem, Judah, in the house of David.
26. Who were his father and mother?
Joseph and Mary.
27. Will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came?
Jesus came, Abraham,
Oh, that's David.
Islam. 28. Why did Allah send Jesus to this earth?
Seeing the Israelites from the iron hand pressure to the pale skinned nations of Europe, who governed a portion of Palestine at that time. Prophet,
29. How long has that been?
about 2,000 years ago.
30. What is the nationality of Ruth?
Ruth was a Moabite,
31. What is the modern name for Moabites?
Moroccans,
32. Where's the Moroccan Empire?
northwest of Mexico,
33. What is the modern name for a Mexican?
Africa,
34. What is the title given to our ruler in Morocco?
Sultan.
And also just want to throw out there, family, if it's any questions, this is the question and answer period. So if it was a 101 that you don't quite understand, that you wanted to be broken down, feel free to raise your hand.
Absolutely.
35. Where do we get the name Jesus?
From the east.
36. What does the name Jesus mean?
Jesus means justice.
37. Did the angel give to the child that was called Jesus a holy name?
Yes, but it cannot be used by those who are slaves to sin.
38. What is an angel?
Angels are manifested in human flesh.
39. What are angels used for?
All nations.
40. What is our prophet to us?
The angel of Allah was sent to bring us the everlasting gospel of Allah.
Islam. 41. What is the everlasting gospel?
It is saving power that comes from Allah.
Islam.
Islam.
42. What is the covenant of the great God Allah?
Honor thy father and thy mother, that their days may be long upon the earth, and which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee.
43. At what age does Jesus begin to teach?
At the age of 12.
44. Where did he teach?
India, Africa, and Europe.
44. How long did he teach?
18 years.
46. What did Jesus say that would make you free?
Truth.
47. What is truth?
Truth is ought.
48. What is ought?
Ought is a law.
49. Can truth change?
You cannot change or pass away.
50. What other name do we give truth?
Holy breath.
51. What have you to say about holy breath?
All we can say is it is great, it is good, it was, it is, and evermore to be. Amen.
Islam. 52. At what place on earth was the physical part of man formed?
In the Garden of Eden,
53. Where's the Garden of Eden?
in the land of Canaan, in the city of Mecca.
54. What is the modern name for the Garden of Eden?
Mecca.
55. What is the name of the first physical man?
The name cannot be used only by the executive rulers of the AC or the M.S.T of A.
56. What are the words of AC of the M.S.T of A?
Chamber.
57. Who were Adam and Eve?
They are the mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatics and Muslims.
58. Where did they go?
They went into Asia.
59. What is the modern name given to the children?
Asiatic.
60. Who was guarding the holy city of Mecca today to keep unbelievers away?
Angels.
61. What is the modern name for those angels?
Asiatic.
62. What is the shade of their skin?
Olive.
63. Are the Moorish Americans any relation to those angels?
Yes. We all have the same father and mother.
64. Give 5 names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve.
Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast.
Now, Islam.
Okay. I rise to praise to Allah, honors to Noble Jew Ali, to the Grand Sheikh and the Sheikhs, and the Sheikh, and all those that are present here today, and everything that pertains to Islam.
Islam.
On that question, let me get back to it now.
64.
64. Give 5 names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve: Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and the beast. My question is it seems to be like a thin line between the descendants of Adam and Eve and the Asiatics, the fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the separation come in?
Well,
That sounds like everybody. Adam and Eve being the first.
Islam. So now go into the Quran, chapter 1.
Yeah.
As
I was going to say that.
what is the purpose of being here, or how did man get here? Man fell just to gratify his lower self. So also that's why I was laughing, because 57 says, who were Adam and Eve? They were the mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatics and Muslims, right? Which meaning that at one point that's the fall, and then into the physical. And then it's 58 says, where did they go? It says they went into Asia, but weren't they already in the Garden of Eden? Is that already not in Asia physically?
Yes.
So that means that it wasn't physical.
Yeah.
It was a mental effect was disbarred. So they stepped out of the Holy Land and started straying after European knowledge of which they knew nothing about.
Right.
Now that's why it says 64 is give some of the names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve, because now you operating in lower self. That's where you get your Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast from.
For any of the descendants, everybody,
Well, who are Asiatics and Muslims?
fallen angels.
Yeah, but as collectively as a people, would that still not be all of us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be yes.
That's
yes.
I was just trying to get you to say that that's all of us.
Yes, exactly. So there's no confusion. It shouldn't be no confusion.
It is.
Self-explanatory.
It's okay. So
Go
the
ahead.
point is, so those are just names given to everybody.
Right. Well, those who are operating in their lower selves was because again, that's part of the reason why we're here in the physical in the first place, just to gratify our lower selves. And that's again why we operate in between the Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. Those are faculties of the lower self,
Spirits.
of the spirits of the lower
Okay,
self.
so then those names were given to us, but we just have to rise them up.
And Islam.
Absolutely.
Islam.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay.
Islam.
It sounded like that there was another set of people that didn't get the name.
No.
That's
Those are
where I
just
was
different
coming.
faculties
Okay,
of
I'm
self.
good. I'm good.
Islam. Because that's why 59 says, what is the modern
wise
name?
man is to pose a question.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
That's what Moors do.
They're gonna ask me out there.
Indeed.
So, okay, I'm good.
Islam.
Thank you.
You're welcome. 65. What is the devil sometimes called? See?
The lower self.
See that? Now, again, go back to 64. Satan, Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. Those are just faculties of lower self. That's
The
all.
actions.
Right. 66. How many cells are there?
2.
67. Name them.
High self, lower self.
68. What people represent the higher self?
Angels
To protect the holy city.
of Mecca.
People that still never left Ace. 69. What people represent the lower self?
Those who were cast out of the holy city
And those who accept their
teaching.
teaching.
Islam.
Yes.
70. What is the higher self?
The higher self is the mother of
Virtue,
virtue and
the harmonies of life that brings justice, mercy, love, and right.
71. Can the higher self pass away?
No,
72. Why?
because it is a law of man.
It is a law in man.
73. What does the lower self breed?
Hatred,
Hatred,
slander,
slander,
lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms.
74. What did the higher self say to the lower self at one time when he met him?
Where are you going, Satan?
75. What was the answer that the lower self gave to the higher self?
I'm going to and from the
earth,
earth,
seeking whom I may devour.
76. Has he finished his task of devouring?
Yes.
77. When was his time declared out?
When
Nailed
you
Jesus to the cross.
78. What were the last words Jesus uttered?
It is finished.
79. What did he have reference to?
And in reference to the end of Satan.
So now, Mundali, brother, when that's the end of him, physical self, ascending back to Father God Allah. 80. Did Jesus say that he will return to conquer him?
Yes.
81. What is the name of the person into whom Jesus was first reincarnated?
Prophet Muhammad the Conqueror.
82. Was Satan to be bound then?
Satan was to be bound in part.
83. When was the head of Satan taken off?
1453 Byzantine.
84. By whom?
Muhammad.
85. Name some of the marks that were put upon the Moors of the Northwest by the European nations in 1774.
Negro, black, colored, Egypt.
86. Negro.
A name given to the river in West Africa by the Moors because it contains
87. What is meant by the word black?
Black according to science means death.
88. What does the word colored mean?
Color means anything that has been stained or modified.
89. What does Ethiopia mean?
Ethiopia means something divided.
90. Can a man be Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian?
No.
91. Why? 92. What title does Satan give himself?
God.
93. Will you define the word white?
White is purity. Purity means God. God means the root of the Lamb.
94. To whom do we refer at times being the great God? 95. Is the devil made in the image and the likeness of Allah?
No, he's the shadow of our Lord self pass away.
96. Who made the devil?
Elohim.
97. Who is Elohim?
Elohim is the seven created spirits that create everything that ever was and is and ever will.
98. What is Elohim sometimes called?
7 hours of Allah.
99. How many days are in a circle?
7 days.
100. How many days are there in the creation?
7 days.
101.
Get the door.
According to science, how many days are there in a year?
7 days.
Islam. I'm going to bring Sheikh Shatik back up.
Thank you, brother
Demonstrate his lesson.
Omari. That
You're
was
welcome.
very well done. And My beloved brother here, he raised a good question. So it brought me before I just close out my two closing passages. I want to bring up this particular passage in reference to what you were saying about the Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. It's right here in chapter 1. I'm gonna go down to I'm in the fifth paragraph. I'm just, you don't have to turn to it. I'm just going to go into it. Man is the Lord of all the plane of manifest, of protoblast, of mineral, of plant, of beast. But he gave up his birthrights to gratify his lower self. But man will regain his lost estate, his heritage, and his heritage. But he must do it in a conflict that is not told in words. So that gets into that part where the Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast, and then and then it goes on to say name them high self and Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast, and those who were cast out of the holy city. That was us, because no. I'm just referencing something. Even though I know now you understand it, but yet he must suffer trials and temptations manifold. But let him know that Ketubim and Seraphim that rule the stations of the sun, and the spirit of the Almighty Allah, who rules the solar stars, are his protectors, his guide, and they will lead to victory. Now I'll get into my light little passage, and I'm going to step aside and bring the Grand Sheik up. You're welcome. I'm in the treaty of peace and friendship. I was on the train and it just hit me. And it says, one must always remember that the treaty is the established law of the land, just as the Constitution for the nation is. So they are both one. Thus, all treaties are conjoined as one, as I said, with the established law of the land. That's Islamism. That's what religion is. See, it's law and governmental principles. It's old, it's ancient. Therefore, peace by the efforts of all parties alludes to a state of calmness, harmoniousness, and tranquility. And treaties are compacts that represent the honor of the parties to them, to uphold and take such measures as are necessary to keep peace. And in my closing, I will go to chapter 31, the Holy Instructions from the Prophet on Justice. It goes on to say, ayat 1 up to 4, and that's where I'm going to stop. The peace of society dependeth upon justice, the happiness of individuals on the safe enjoyment of all their possessions. Keep the desires of thy heart, therefore, within the bounds of moderation. Don't let your imagination or your thoughts get too far gone that you sin. Let the hand of justice lead them aright. Cast not an evil eye on the goods of thy neighbor. Let whatever is his or her property be sacred to thy touch. Let no temptation allure thee, nor any provocation excite thee to lift up thy hand to the hazards of his or her life. And I'm going to close with that. Thank you for being who you are, Moors. And I want to say this before I part. The actual question and the actual raising of the hands is now ceased until further notice. If the Grand Sheik say to raise your hand, then please do that so that he can complete his lesson plan. Islam. Next voice y'all will be hearing now will be Grand Sheik Lord Nature El Bay. Peace.
Here. Allah.
Salam, family. Salam. Always first rise in the name of Allah, giving perfect praise to the Almighty, giving honors to His Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the last prophet in these days, the savior of humanity, our leader, our affectionate leader, Islam. Giving honors to all Moorish American, all faithful Moors, all loyal Moors, giving honors to all the American citizens, giving honors to the folks. Islam.
Islam.
Islam, Moors, we always rise in the name of Allah, and not just in temple meetings. Anytime you rise, it could be getting out of bed is a form of rising. Anytime you stand up, you giving praise to the Almighty. You don't have to verbally say that, but you should chant it. You should vibrate on that frequency anytime you rise. Islam. So it's a tradition we do in the temple, but it's something that you should practice all the time. Islam, thank Allah for giving you the strength to rise. Islam. In our old time religion, which is Islamism, in our old time practice, even when we pray, we do prayer in the form of rising. Versus other brother and sister Muslims of the world, they might bend down, prostrate, and give praise to Allah, or kneel down, and even in some yoga practices, they do the opposite. It doesn't mean that we're better, it's just a different understanding. So when we rise on 7, remember, we're coming from a fallen state, a fallen stage of humanity. So everything we do is pertaining to elevating in more science. So we do that in the form of rising. We rise our consciousness, our frequency, our physical composition. So we rise to a state of upward, which upward represents perfection. Islam.
Islam.
We only give praise to Allah because Allah is the only one worthy of praise. And when we understand that we are connected, the lines of the higher frequencies back together, then we become Allah in that higher state. So we'll be giving praise to ourselves, not an outside entity. Because man and Allah is one. Islam?
Islam.
But something occurred in chapter 1. Man debased himself from Allah through what? Through carnal thoughts and deeds. Islam. So the Quran says the carnal nature soon became a foe that what? That man must fight. The carnal nature is the foe, Morris.
That's right. That's the foe.
That's the foe. That's why it's so hard to refrain from eating it. Because it's one of man's biggest foes. Quran also tells us that we have to leave the land of fleshly things and go where? Go with mind. I'll repeat, we have to leave the land of fleshly things and go with mind, because mind does not forget. Mind is eternal, is everlasting. Mind, that is. But man in the physical is not. The carnal nature, period, is not. The physical is not. So our masterminds trace themselves backwards through the ages, and thus they know. So we have to remember and trace ourselves back to being Moors. Because if we just know we're Moors because the literature told us so, then we simply don't know.
Islam.
Then that means we guess. That means that some of us with turbans and feathers on are guessing that we're Moors, but we really don't know that to be facts. And literature alone is not going to bring that to your conscious state. It's unfolding into that through tracing yourself backwards through the ages. But you have to read in order to raise your vibration to be able to do that. So it's a process, it's a procedure on regaining your Moorish state. And like the prophet said, it's going to be done in a conflict that cannot be told in words. Islam.
Islam.
Sheikh, did you ask Sheikh's?
Yes, I did.
All right. All right. Islam. There's a briefcase in the back.
I looked in it.
It's not in there?
It's not in there.
All right. So. So being that I'm talking about tracing ourselves back and backwards, there's many different time zones, I would say, that we can do that and picture ourselves, because, you know, time never was when man was not. So therefore, we've been around for ages and ages and ages and ages. So according to whatever age or whatever time reference, we might appear to be different. We might have looked different. We might have been in flesh. We might not have been in flesh. So everybody will have a different story when it comes to that particular situation. However, when we deal with modern day tracing ourselves back, I want to go back to the time that is called slavery, which is marked from 1779 to 1865, according to Act 6 of the Divine Constitution. And this is important for us because we have to deal with past, present, and future. Everyone should have a goal. And the lesson also tells us that a member's interest should be in one direction. That means that we all here, although we might have separate goals in life, but far as the main objective on why we're here, why we in the Moor Science Temple of America, then our interests should be very similar to certain things. That's why they say birds of a feather flock together. So although we might have different sports or different movies and different food or whatever, some of our interests should be right on point, should be right and exact the same. So I always highlight Act 6. In Act 6, we all should know what Act 6 says by now. We're dealing with numerology, we're dealing with language, we're dealing with words. So numbers is important, especially numbers that's in our Moor Science Temple of America's doctrine. We got to remember the numbers, the passages, the acts, very important. So Act 6 says with us meaning us in the Moor Science Temple of America, also us meaning nation. With us, all members, not partial members, but every single member must proclaim. Must proclaim what? Their nationality, which is the same, but I'm just using parts of speech now because their nationality, and I'm going to say our nationality, because we're not talking third party here, third person. So what that means that when you hear their or they, always say you when you're reading. That way, whatever you're reading, you know that it pertains to you. So we must proclaim our nationality. And then we are teaching our people their nationality and what? That they must know that they're not
Negro, black, and colored.
Negro, black, colored, and Ethiopian. Why?
Given to slaves.
All right, so Islam. So, Islam. I want to stop there for a minute because the word slave is very, very vital in this movement. However, it's the most least talked about word or term in the movement. And that needs to be addressed. Through several different portions of our instructions, our lessons, it talks about slave and slavery. However, it's the one thing that we kind of ignore the most. The fact that slavery existed and the fact that slavery still is in effect. We have to talk about slavery because one of the main reasons I'm here is because of slavery. And slavery, or the word slave, is actually a claim that's made upon you. Just like the word mark. The marks that was put upon us, well, slave is also a mark. So slave itself has to be disclaimed within verbal statement, also within documentation and literature, and also within principles and practice, behavior, etc. So remember, black was a mark that was put upon so-called slaves, or those that were enslaved, because we wasn't slaves. But we were enslaved. There's a difference. The 13th Amendment actually specifies that. You have voluntary and involuntary. But regardless of the two, neither is constitutional under this government. So I want to explain that because some of our ways and actions are still that of a slave, and it's still unconstitutional. But everyone, we go outside in the streets and everybody would say, oh, slavery, that don't exist anymore. Slavery was a couple hundred years ago. Those days is over. However, it's not over. And we have a hard time correlating the literature or the language of slavery and bringing it modern day. And people don't want to do that because in their mind, they don't want to, no one wants to believe or think that they're a slave. However, if you don't deal with reality and truth, then you have karma behind that. Because slavery itself is unconstitutional, both civically and divinely. We're going to deal with the word slave for a second. So I'm going to go into an unabridged dictionary, Webster's, and define the word slave as a noun. So we know slave is Slavic. However, I want to get into what is meant by the word slave. That's different as well. Because we're not coming from a tribal or nation perspective as Slavic. That's not what's meant by the word slave here in this nation government style United States of America. So number one, a bond servant, a person who is wholly subject to the will of another, one who has no will of his own, but whose persons and services are wholly under the control of another. Two, one who has lost the power of resistance, or one who surrenders himself to any power whatever, as a slave to passion, to lust, to ambition. Three, a mean person, one in the lowest state of life, a Slavic. Thank you, sir. So let's look at this again. One who has lost the power of resistance, or one who surrenders himself to any power whatever. So when it means one who has lost its resistance, meaning that if you're to the state where you're not willing to challenge, to stand, or to fight for your freedom, then you are considered a slave. And this is why the movement in Prophet Noble Drew Ali stated that you got to have courage enough for truth. To be a member, to be a free national, you have to have courage enough for truth, and you got to be willing to stand. To go to the divine warning again, and he says, for the stand for what? The enforcement of the Constitution. These are words that deals with resistance. Resistance also meaning challenging. You have to fight for your freedom. I've always said this, that you have no rights if you're not willing to defend them.
Islam.
So people look at the word meaning rights as you automatically have rights, and you don't automatically have rights, because if you're not willing to defend them, then you don't have them. And that's what is assumed, and that's how you treat it. It's assumed from the door that you don't have any rights. It's assumed that you Negro, black, and you colored. So therefore, no rights is associated with that vibration. You have to challenge that allegation or assumption in order to even have a chance to even talk about rights. And those of you who deal with challenging, you know what I'm talking about. I'm in the due process of law book right now. And the word slave in this diction, in this particular pamphlet, it says a man who is by law deprived of his liberty for life and becomes the property of another. A slave has no political rights and generally has no civil rights. He can enter into no contract unless specifically authorized by law. What he acquires generally belongs to his master. The children of female slaves follow the condition of their mothers and are themselves slaves. Everybody with me?
Repeat that.
The whole passage?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to repeat. Slave, a man who is by law deprived of his liberty for life and becomes the property of another. A slave has no political rights and generally has no civil rights. He can enter into no contract unless specifically authorized by law. What he acquires generally belongs to his master. And the children of female slaves follow the condition of their mothers and are themselves slaves. So again, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, again, Acts 7, encouraged and mandated us to send our children to Sunday school. And he instructed the men to take these lessons home and get your house in order. And this is very important because of one of the statements that was just made here. The children themselves will also be marked slaves if the parents are marked slaves. So we have to free ourselves in order for our children to even have a chance. Traditionally, karmatically, we carry the burden of generations because generations are coming out being marked slave because the elders have not fought for them. And this is why the younger generation actually is rebelling to the older generation.
Islam.
Even though they might not understand it from a political perspective, but spiritually, they rebel and have no trust in their elders and their parents and their aunts, uncles, and their neighbors. So the disconnect has taken place generations ago. And then if you notice, you have social services, child services. They call DIFAs, some areas. Different states might call them different by different names. They're quick to come and confiscate children. We call it kidnapping. The so-called parental rights have been taken away from the parents. This is not all by chance. We blame what we call the system for all of these new changes and amendments and lack of rights when we should be blaming ourselves. Any questions before I continue? Slow. Sheikahs will be right out. So remember, from 1779 until 1865, what we're reading was actually, according to their terminology, legal. It was legal. Meaning that a slaveholder, a plantation or institution can privately own an individual and personally be the lien holder of all that individual's possessions. could be also the holder in due course of all the possessions, the assets of the individual. Legally. Individuals were not allowed to even own property. It's really still the same way. We just ain't get to that point yet. However, this was legal and outright. There was no hidden agendas there. So Negro, Black, and Colored was nicknames that were given to the slaves by slave holders. So I got to explain it like this because we're still dealing with this Negro and this Black situation where some of our people are just not getting it. They're still trying to make Black some type of name to hold on to, something of value to hold on to, and they don't really understand where this came from and what you're insinuating by still referring to yourself as a Black person. When the term slavery was ended legally, the term Black Negro should have ended legally, because Black came after the word slave. The word Black was thought of as a name, as a nickname, only because of the slaves. So when they ended the term slavery as applied to people, they should have took the names that was associated with the slave away and gave them the opportunity to turn back to their own surnames, their nation names. But they didn't. This is why Prophet Noble Drew Ali was manifested in flesh to be responsible for that procedure. However, we have to realize we don't get caught up into what Noble Drew Ali did. We need to get caught up into the demand for Noble Drew Ali. Why Allah intended for Drew Ali to come to the earth to do such a thing. We got to look into the need of that, because the Prophet could have been somebody else. Or the Prophet may not existed in that day and time. But the demand for the work that he did was still necessary. So we have to really realize that and not really get caught up too much in the Prophet himself. Once you appreciate what he did and what he was called to do, then you can really give honor to the Prophet. But just by reading and saying I give honor to him is not necessarily giving honor to him. It's acknowledging the work and carrying it out is giving honors to him or your forefathers or whoever they may be. He made a statement. He says, I have given you what it takes to save a nation. Now take it and save yourself. Meaning that he released himself from the liability. It's up to each and every one of us to save ourselves. So when it says that a slave has no political rights, the word political just means the science of government. The body of government. So Drew Ali, you'll hear his terminology again when he tells us that we've been out of the constitutional fold of government, i.e. saying that we have no political rights. Political rights meaning rights to the body. The body is the nation. The body is the government. That means you have no rights to the body. Everybody clear on that?
Islam.
And generally has no civil rights. Civil pertains to citizenship. Citizenship of government, of that particular nation. So you have different types of rights, but specifically we want to highlight what slave indicates as far as rights and what are rights and who acknowledges rights. It says he can enter into no contract unless specifically authorized by law, which means that you have to have permission. If I'm talking about the slave, a slave has to have permission to enter into an agreement, an alliance, a contract, an engagement, i.e. just to do business with anybody. So it's considered a privilege for a slave to enter to any contract with two or more persons. Even into this day, they tell you that a lot of things you do as a citizen is a privilege, i.e. driving. They said driving is a privilege. They tell you that voting is a privilege. It's a privilege only because you wear the tag of slave. Because if you have a right to do something, then that means that you're not a slave. Is that clear?
Islam.
I know everybody heard of the terminology right to travel. Traveling is a right that can only be exercised by natural free people. So whoever they indicate has a privilege to do something from a corporation, an institution, if you only could do something by way of a privilege, then that means that they're insinuating that you are a slave. So in the unabridged dictionary, where it says a slave is a mean person or one in the lowest state of life. So let's deal with what is considered the lowest state of life. The lowest state. State not meaning geographical state. State meaning condition, welfare, not welfare as in assistance welfare, but just the public welfare, your well-being, your welfare, your condition, your economic status, both from an individual and from a nation perspective. So people in the lowest state are also referred to as slaves. So nobody walks, there's no classification on the application that says lowest state. No one asks you, are you in the lowest state? However, there are other questions they might ask you that means the same thing. Far as what is your race? What is your ethnic group? And also what is your citizenship? And all, depending on how you answer these questions, could tell the other people that you are in the lowest state. If you answer black or African American, then you are saying, I am in the lowest state. Then you are agreeing and voluntarily saying that you are a slave.
Islam.
Now that means a lot to someone who's contracting with you. Because if you contract with somebody and you tell them that I am a slave, then you tell them you have no right to sue. That's the main part to them, because that means you have no recourse. That means whatever they're agreeing to, they don't have to uphold their end. Because legally, you had no right to contract from the beginning. So that means that they have no obligation. That means that they could sell you something and they can legally come back and take it away from you. Will they do that? Usually will they do that? No. Because it exposes the fraud. But sometimes they do when you don't cooperate with the contract or with them. As far as taxes, defaulting on a note to a mortgage, you got something in a car that they don't agree with, different scenarios. But they can exercise that freedom that they have by taking it away from you, which means that it was not yours to begin with. We don't really look at the dynamics of these things because we've been brainwashed and taught not to resist, not to challenge what was put upon us. But the first thing we have to realize is that we are enslaved. And slavery never went away. Once we can realize that, then you can make a sound decision on whether you want to continue to be a slave or you want out. And this is what this movement is really about. It's for those who want out.
Islam.
Just putting it into another perspective. For some people, it's a social network. It's a feel-good situation. It's people in this for different reasons. That's why I'm saying this. Across the board. But this is really what this is about. If you think your condition could be better, then join the Moorish Temple and become a part of the movement. The condition is the state. You think your state can be better. State is also status. So if you think your status could be better, but if you got the ego that you straight and you free and nobody can tell you nothing, then there's nothing that no one can tell you at that point. Minority people is also the lowest state. The word minority. Yes, minority means incompetent. But these are classifications. Remember, question number 85. Name some of the marks. We should know all the marks that was put upon the Moors because that's how they get you. If you only know some of the marks, then they'll still catch you sometime because you agree to other terms that you wasn't familiar with, like we were speaking about last week. There's several different marks, and they keep coming up with marks. But if we keep accepting the marks, then we keep agreeing to be a slave. So don't forget that word minority is very important because they have classifications for minority people and minority businesses where you can contract and navigate through that because they have certain things that they have to give back to so-called minorities. However, you have to know how to contract. You need to know how to fill out these applications when you're dealing with the people. That it means that you don't have to disassociate from some terms. You just have to know how to do that. Because you're not going to get 40 acres and a mule. You're not getting reparations from the perspective of how they told you. But they have other programs and other ways that they filter the reparation. But you have to know how and when it's available. You got to know how to contract to get it. That's what that minority business is all about. But reparation, or rep the nation, or repair the nation, means that you have to be a part of a nation. Reparation only pertains to a nation. And this is how we've been tricked with that whole ordeal, because black is not a nation.
No.
African American is not a nation. No. Afro American is not a nation. And Indian is not a nation. So again, there's no obligation for anyone to give back anything to those that's not a part of a nation first. There's no obligation. I was looking for this term.
Yes.
That term is not in
Okay.
that I asked you about. So right now I'm just going through a due process of law book, and I'm going through the glossary. Sneaker and I put a book together called Due Process of Law back in, I believe, 2005. But in the back of the book is a glossary of definitions, like a mini Black's Law dictionary book with names or titles and words that pertain to the Moors, or any true American citizen, that is. Yeah. One term here that I'm looking at is nobility. The word nobility, or a noble, like in Noble Drew Ali, could be a person or a group of persons having legally recognized titles usually of a hereditary nature, who compose or who are composed in a society. Hereditary is the key here. Why? Because we are nobles, because we are descendants of nobles.
Islam.
We are descendant of the nobles. So the Moroccans, the ancient Moroccans, the ancient Moabites, and the ancient Canaanites were considered nobles. So because we are descendants of the nobles, we carry the same status as nobles. However, our character has to vibrate in unison or harmonize with what noble represents, or else we won't be recognized as nobles.
Islam.
It says here, having legally recognized titles. Now, the prophet told us that he brought us the titles to our vast estate. So he brought us back our titles of nobility. We use them as surnames, which are L's and B's. Those are titles of nobility. They're also hereditary titles, as the word expresses. That's why they're important to attach to the given name or the chosen name, whatever name you assume. Because that's the family name. That's the hereditary part of your name that links you back to your noble family. So you go into the Constitution of the United States. It says the state cannot grant titles of nobility. Was it Article 1, Section 10? Now, why does it say that? Why cannot the state grant titles of nobility? And what state are they talking about? Well, any of the states, none of the so-called 50 states or 48 states for starters. And neither can the federal government do the same.
I found the definition.
All right, so that's all I need.
know if that suffices.
It's not the definition that you got. Click on one of the definition. What's in there? Remember, what they considered the founding fathers of this nation didn't have those titles of nobility. And they were of European descent. So they overthrew our forefathers and denationalized them. They stripped their titles of nobility away. So they wasn't going to make a law where they can grant those titles of nobility, because for them to grant those titles of nobility will mean that they would give you your recognition and your status back to you, which is not in their plan. Their plan was to turn us into slaves.
Wow.
So that's important, because some people really don't understand the process of proclamation, why we do a common law proclamation opposed to a statutory proclamation. Because if you do a statutory proclamation where you go through the state, they're not going to give you your title to your vast estate. They're not going to legally turn you free. They can't by law, and it's not within their intentions to do that.
Wow.
They will change your name for you and add El Bay as your name if that's what you like. But within their statutory process, they're no way saying that you are a free man or a free woman. They will put you right back under the 14th Amendment citizenship status, which nulls and void them changing your name from El to Bay in the first place. So Moors got to be careful when they try to follow that procedure. Due to frustration, Moors still try to follow that because they have problems trying to go around it. But we got to understand that resistance is necessary. We need resistance, because without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength. So you got to fight to be free. You got to fight to get your title back. You got to fight for what your forefathers fought for. So we can't get upset with the process. We can't get upset with what they're making us go through. It's a healthy challenge, and it makes us stronger mentally.
Wow.
And makes us appreciate more of what Drew Ali has done for us and what we were supposed to do for ourselves. Without the resistance, like he said, we'll go back to sleep. Said if I would have told you everything, you would have went back to sleep. So just say if it was so easy to come into this and just go downtown and show them something, and there's no legal fights whatsoever, like some of our elder Moors have done that already. Never had to fight for anything. And those are the ones that's telling you that they don't deal with this, they don't deal with that. Or we don't deal with the Constitution, we don't deal with law, because they're telling you the truth. They don't deal with it. They never had to deal with it. So they can't help you deal with something that they're not familiar with. We keep trying to force them to deal with something that they never dealt with. Right, wrong, and indifferent. Well, I'm just saying that, no disrespect to the elders, but just saying that it's a new era of time now. And we can't cry over spilt milk. We have to get into the law, take our place in the affairs of men, and free ourselves and stop waiting for other people to do so. Because to do that is no different from the church waiting for Jesus to come back. They say Jesus is the savior of the world. He's going to come back and save the people. But they don't, and they're right, but they don't understand who Jesus is. And we don't want to get caught up into that same mystery of waiting for somebody else to free us, regardless if we call him Jesus or call him something else. We waiting for a grand sheik to free us. We waiting for a grand governor to free us. We waiting for somebody to free us. We still taking the power outside of self. And Drew Ali said it himself, I've given you what it takes to save the nation. You have to take that and go free yourself. Save yourself. So even he said, you can't wait around for nobody. Still working on that?
Yeah.
What's the name?
Sure.
Constitution.
Stateless person. Is there anyone who does not know what that term means? Good. How about the word sui juris?
Sui juris.
State this person, can we go back to that?
Yes, sir.
I don't know what it means.
All right. So a stateless person is one who is not a national or is without a nationality. Those individuals are referred to as stateless persons. Means that you're without a state. And state means body. You're without a body. You're without a nation. You're without a government. You're not part of a government. So again, Negroes, black, and colored are stateless persons. All right. Let's see.
Black skull.
It's in brief. It's not the whole thing, but I'll use it. So, a stateless person is one without a nationality. Sui juris. And that's a Latin term spelled S-U-I-J-U-R-I-S.
Sui juris.
All right. I'm going to give you the definition for that. One who has all rights to which a free man is entitled. One who is not under the power of another as a slave, a minor, and the like. Excuse me? Yes. One who has all the rights to which a free man is entitled, and one who is not under the power of another as a slave, a minor, and the like.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Spell S-U-I.
J-U-R-I-S.
Space, then J-U-R-I-S. It's a Latin term. Sui juris. So again, if we just look at that again, a pole is like the opposite of a slave. Juris is jury or juror, which means body. So it says one who has all rights to which freeman is entitled. Freeman, free, the opposite of slave. So again, when we're conversating or communicating to people, corporations, to the like, we have to use terms that express freedom and free men and free society. This is why when you read in Drew Ali's literature, he always putting free in front of the word, like free national constitution, free national being. Free describes what comes after free. If not, it could be assumed otherwise.
Islam.
Because of slavery is so intense and so relevant, you got to kind of disclaim slavery. You got to disclaim slavery much as you can just to make it explicit that I'm not a slave. I am a free man. You know, and we just don't communicate like that. You know, if you watch the movie, what is it, Django?
Yeah.
If you watch the movie, then you'll see how they talking to each other. Say, no, he's a free man. You have to say it like that. You can't be afraid, because if not, they're gonna consider you a slave. And they don't use the word slave, but they use another word that describes that it means the same thing as a slave. And then you wonder why it's so hard to get stuff done, and it's because they're saying that a slave don't have a right to do that. Slave can't do this. Slave can't file for this. That's what they used to say. Now that they can't say that no more, they find another way to hide it, but still treat you the same way. So if you look at
Sorry.
this is part of it. It's the beginning. Right, Morris, is there any questions? Anything anybody would like to add pertaining to the lesson? Yes. Yes, sister. You first.
Oh, no, can't hear you.
Oh, no, you gotta speak up, sister. You gotta stand.
Yes, and just a reference of the, you talking about the same usage of where we were in the past and where we are in the current state of the de facto system still trying to keep us unaware
Correct.
of our enslavement. So, I guess my question is really pertaining to sometimes sometimes you want to believe that they really don't know. You know, just say for an example, for a couple of days ago, and it was dinner there, but from what I understand, on the public side, we're doing whatever it is, subject matter discussions, or if it is a ticket or whatever, it's your in or for. On the other side of what I've been learning in various sources, I really trust.
I can't hear the last
Are
part.
you familiar with that? On the right hand, they're doing, in the public, they're doing whatever the subject matter is for which you're important, or taking it, or telling or whatever. On the flip side, they're actually being trusted. So, if, just say for instance, if I knew this, if this is like 100%, you know, what I know, and I could confirm someone, an administrator, and they are not acknowledging, for me, it kind of puts me in the same situation of doubting information is accurate of what we know. So, again, we're speaking to the term enslavement, or knowing if you're a 14th Amendment citizen because you're taking, buying into the contract. You may not be buying into the labels they were provided, but if they're not acknowledging your status, then, you know, again, I'm going to just shove several years into learning. It just puts me a step back and say, okay, is it just delusional? Is it delusional what's going on here, or are they just intentionally, that's their mission, is to deny, you know?
There's some.
So that's what I'm saying, and sometimes it makes me, I guess, crazy in what this really is about, and not wanting to be anything except a righteous and what I know, and of course, you know, some of it's still lingering, you know, lack of better terms, but for the most part, I don't know anything about school because I was in religion for years, you know, so coming out of that, you know, I want to be certain what I know, and it's based upon some foundation, not just, you know, in a movement, you know, moving. Quick, I want anybody to say, if I can learn my own stuff. I'm saying, so I just want to put that out there. Sometimes in learning information, it's kind of, you know, how do you know if if I've read the Septuagint or Yiddish or Torah or the Bhagavad Gita, if I read that, you have it, and you're coming from those books, then you really have communication. So I think that's what I'm saying, is that I feel like this is like this missing part if whether I'm in court and you're not really acknowledging, and they have a right to acknowledge. I'm asking you questions and I ask you if this is a court record, you know, and I put it out there, and you don't respond.
Let me help you with
I
that.
have to worry if what I've learned is valid. So I just think,
Well, it's not about what you learn. It's about how well you can articulate what you learn. And you mentioned trust law, right? Drew Ali says that they place their trust upon names and issues formed by their forefathers. So when you ask the question about intent, what is their intent? Their intent is what he just said. They place their trust upon names and issues formed by their forefathers. They have no interest and obligation to you. So they have no interest in trying to acknowledge who you are. They're trying to preserve who they are. They're trying to boost their status. They're not trying to boost yours. So they're not going to give you keys or any voluntarily acknowledgement behind what you're trying to say or do. They're going to ignore what you're saying and act like they don't know what you're talking about. It's all about procedure when you're dealing with court. It's not about what you know. It's not about what you read. It's not about who you're affiliated with. It's how well you can articulate to that court what you're trying to do. They go by procedure only. Law is procedure in law. It's not about right or wrong. Person could be dead wrong and they know it. But if the procedure is not right, then somebody can get away with whatever they want. And they do it all the time. And people are just emotional behind it because they don't know the procedure of the court. That is what incompetent means. Legally incompetent, not saying you personally, but just saying that if you don't know the rules and procedures of the court, that is considered legally incompetent. And when they see that, they have no obligation to what you're saying. It's discretionary to them if they want to acknowledge it or not. And it's all how we procedure is all how we communicate with that court from the very beginning with the procedure that determines the outcome of that situation. And that's really the best way to explain it. And it's not just with us, it's with anybody who goes to there, even with their own people. An attorney against another attorney. Who's more successful is based on who has the correct or the best procedure. It's not about whose client was innocent or guilty. Sometimes it's about how much money they have. But usually it's procedure. The judge has an obligation to procedure. He's the pay rule. He's neutral. He's only the referee. He can't play the game for you. So they can know good that you are, intended to communicate well. They might know that you had nothing to do with a situation, but if your procedure doesn't communicate that, then if you can't move the court, that's another thing. Moors are afraid of the word motion, and because of that, they don't know how to move the court properly. An affidavit doesn't move the court. Affidavit is a different process than a motion is. Affidavit is just an affirmation of truth, but it doesn't obligate someone to move. You can, but a motion deals with procedure. So you have to indicate what you want the court to do or what the court should do. This is why we always done what we call writ of mandamus, because that's an order for the court to take note to do something. You can send an affidavit in, and the affidavit doesn't obligate. You could say, I'm the queen of whoever and this, that, and the third, and that's just an affidavit. It doesn't have a procedure back with that. So the judge is not obligated to dismiss a case because you sent the affidavit. That just relates to procedure again. It has nothing to do with sovereignty or any of those things. It has nothing to do with it. Someone in a Negro status can win a case if the procedure is right. When technically they really have no right to be acknowledged anyway. But if the procedure is tight and they got a good representation, they can win the case.
So it's also during slavery time, a lot of cases where so-called, I guess they would still be considered slaves or runaway slaves, you know, had court cases as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those cases. So I do understand what you're saying. It's definitely true.
Yes.
Just to add on what you were saying, as far as the court, you know, having something that, well, you've had a journey, you know, just listening to what you were saying as far as your journey with churches and different parts of understanding and what you were specifically saying as is because this court doesn't want to recognize, that's the word, recognize what you're saying to this court. Like she was saying, I think it's more of something within you other than the court. So, in my thinking, I hate to kind of say it this way, I don't necessarily, of course, it has bearing because you're in their court. But ultimately, I think what he's really trying to say is that it's more about you, your gut feeling, your journey. My journey started from trying to understand history. What I have learned recently, this is really about history and law. So, and basically, I think, you know, learning about past and where history has come from, it's led me to understand that you come over here in that ship. It's not understandable that that could even actually happen. You barely got enough food and water to bring people from here to there, and that less thousands of slaves. So the whole narrative has been totally given us. And we have to stop taking us for shores. I think what he used was I'm trying to read it right now. It was a P word.
I use the P word.
Yeah, it was one that started with P.
B or P?
P.
All right.
No, it's a small word. Give me a second. No. It was, basically, our understanding of that word is it can be given, but it can also be taken back. Privilege. Yes. Privilege versus right.
All right.
Like you said, driving is privilege. But ultimately, the reason to bring that word up is of course, my understanding of the word privilege was is you can attain it, but it can be given, it can be taken away. But in actuality, from understanding how you're meaning things, is even though it's said to be a privilege, you actually don't attain that privilege. Because of course it can be taken away, but if you're under a certain status, you don't even have that. So that makes sense.
A privilege is discretionary
Okay.
by the ones who give you the privilege in the first place.
But if you're in a certain status, okay, I understand what you're saying. They can give it, or like you said, if you're going to a courtroom years ago, as slaves went to a courtroom and won their court cases, I guess they were given that privilege. But ultimately, under their status, they're not really even supposed to be getting that privilege.
Yes, that is correct. That's why I said it's discretionary. Whether they want to hear it or not, don't want to hear it, it's discretionary. And that's everything that goes on. Remember, we are declared, proclaimed as Moorish Americans, as free men. This is what we declare. This is what we proclaim. Although they know what that really means, they're still going to ignore that as much as possible. And they might give it a little recognition where they will agree or, press your hand for what you've done. But is it legally going to obligate them to something different on the back end? Is discretionary according to how you can invoke that. That's what it comes down to. And every individual is different. There's no rule of thumb to that.
So just
The best, like Drew Ali said it best, you know, you speak with an intelligent tone and you get a favorable reply. So it's a case by case basis. No one's, you're not going to get, all situations are different.
So you might not get the same result.
Absolutely. You're always going to get a different result. Different individual, different scenario, different subject matter. Everything is always going to be different. You win some, you lose some. It's not personal. We just understanding what the true mission is based off what you're saying is the mission itself. So yeah, we're gonna lose some. When we lose, we just gotta understand the mission. You know, we get back into the gym mentally, the temple, or wherever your library or whatever. You go back to the drawing board and you gotta try to figure out another solution. We all go through it, but we need those challenges and those resistance to unfold, to move forward as an individual and as a nation. Exactly. That's why we're here. So it's not personal.
Well, of course, it's we hate to lose. So if I'm not doing it, my mom was saying, going to whatever we're going to corporate, but like you were saying, it's
Yes.
trial and error.
But it constitutes experience. Losing constitutes experience. We were just talking about this the past day. So you got to lose. You got to fail.
Yeah.
But now that gives you experience. That gives you strength now. And you move forward. You have to have something to compare it to. You know, but going back to the trust just quickly, according to what jurisdiction you're in determines what they're using or what laws they're going by. So you got to also know the terminology of that court. You can't just go in there talking trust, because trust is just a general word. It's all a trust law. Government itself is trust. See, according to how you taught, puts you in a certain mindset to argue certain things, and you got to broaden the argument, because what occurs is we call it jurisdiction. If you're stuck in a certain jurisdiction and your argument calls for another argument from another jurisdiction, like for example, you got municipal court, you got county court, i.e. state court, and you got federal court. And according to where you at, the terminology is going to change and what they're using is going to change. A lot of what we talking is federal question stuff. So it's constitutional arguments which are not talked about in the lower courts. They're contract courts. When you say trust, that means nothing. It's contract. And it all goes back to what type of contract, not that necessarily the subject matter contract or why you there, but the contract of the state and the individual that they summons to come to court, because there's a contract between those parties. And if they have you listed as Negro, black, and colored, they got you listed as a black person, an African American, for starters, that's a contract that they have with one of their own. So now there's the privileges to come into that. There's the status quo to come into that. It's the discretion that comes into how they want to deal with you in that particular contract. And if you can't disclaim the contract or prove that that contract that they're assuming is not the right contract or is illegal or whatever, you can't go in there talking about a trust or any other type of argument until you disclaim what they're alleging. Remember, status is the first thing of law, not contract, not trust. You can't talk trust until status is straight first. So that really means a whole lot to just the question you ask, but just in general into what we're talking about.
Section 2, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear, but It's two different things. I'm actually doing two different things in court. This particular situation, actually, was someone had wrote me a check that bounced, $2,000 check. And misplaced a check, and actually I found the check and did what I needed to do to put it into the court scenario. And,
So you were the plaintiff.
I was a plaintiff, and that's when you said kind of like what you did in preceding action. Well, when I did the initial documentation, I really was trying to get it right with the brother.
So,
and not
terminology. I'm just trying to help you. Trying to clear up your concept. I threw that out there, plaintiff. Right? You agreed, but you're not the plaintiff.
I didn't. I actually, how I wrote it, which is my point. I actually wrote it as claimant.
Okay.
Creditor. So as far as like documentation wise, and I initiated the report, I initiated it.
All right. But how did they assume it? Remember, just like you say something and they play dumb,
Yes.
even if you write something, they play dumb. As they didn't even know what that meant.
They don't have an obligation to like.
Just like pro se. You can put it in a certain way, but then they still kick you back, and then he'll make the statement in court, oh, we have this pro se litigant, and if you just stand there and don't challenge what was said, then regardless if you put it in appropriate persona or not, the record reflected that pro se was mentioned and it wasn't challenged. So pro se it is. That created a contract and a status, and now it still becomes discretionary if they want to hear the case. So all of that other talk about sovereignty and this and that and hereditary, all that stuff we talking could be out the window if certain things is not challenged. So there's no one way to judge a matter. We can, you have to go back to a whole case to figure out what was wrong or why the lack of respect was there. I can't even tell you where it came from because I don't know. You got to go back to always, whenever you go to court, though, always get the disposition and the minutes, the transcripts to the case. That way you can go rehearse what was said and you can look at what you've done wrong, what you did right, and then you can see yourself exactly from procedure-wise where you messed up. Then you can kind of like for the next time try to do better. But Islam, yeah, we can save that talk for after we close. Islam. Islam, just was any other questions before we closed out? Islam, brother.
Being that our government has been here for over 50,000 years, and our flag has flown here over 50,000 years, I would like to know, like, from that time, like 1861, because I know that the Slavics were in captivity to the Moors at that point in time, and they were set free to petition. They petitioned the government or the House of Representatives to be called white people because they knew the status of the Moors was free white persons on the land, and they knew once they get free, they ain't gonna have the same rights as us. In return, when they got free, they formed their own army, the United States Army. And then got funded by Moors, 10 million in gold.
Not in 1861, though.
Not in 1861?
The Moors was already denationalized in 1861.
Okay. My question is that 1861, was Moors in any political power at all?
No.
No.
That's what I was saying. In 1861, the Moors were already denationalized.
Okay.
The Moors was denationalized in 1774. That was the last stronghold of the Moorish presence and government structure here on these shores.
Okay.
So our political recognition as a nation on this side was already to an end. You still had, you know, conscious, active Moors in that era of time, but the government recognition wasn't there. Our flag was taken down, meaning that our government structure came to an halt in that portion of the 1700s. That's when they enslaved us. That's the beginning of them, and that's when they created POWs out of us, which is prisoners of war. That's when we were captured one by one. Remember, army, you mentioned the word army, right? So we had a nation, we had a government. We also had an army. And when that army was destroyed, the flag was only taken down because our army wasn't strong enough in numbers to fight. So the ones that were still fighting was captured. Some of them was killed. Those who wasn't killed was imprisoned, which what we call prisoners of war. They became prisoners of war. From the prisoners of war status or capture, then they were created slaves out of the POW status. So you first had to be captured. Once you were captured, then they figured out what they want to do with you. They're going to sell you or they're going to keep you. Those that they kept, they turned into slaves, and then they were sold to private institutions, or what was called at that time slave holders, private plantations. So our government was done at that time. They formed their own regime, their own government, put their own army in place, and took over the political power, i.e. the seats of government. 1861, you make a reference to, represents when the internal political war took place, where Congress walked out of the congressional meeting, which represents one of the falls of their government. Our government too, but mainly their government.
Okay.
So because Congress adjourned and sent a dia, meant that there was really no government at that time. Not even for them. But that's separate from our government, our Moroccan or Moorish government. 1861, we were already done on this side. Is that clear up the question? What part of it is not clear?
Well, I have elder Moors that have given me documents and showing that, according to the statutes, that Moors was given funding Abraham Lincoln and the Union States Army money to go and fight, to go free the prisoners down in the South.
To go free what prisoners?
Well, you know, the slaves. Okay.
So let me without even asking you a document, all right? Let's just deal with the understanding of that. You said the Moors given a statue, right? So a statue is not real law to begin with, right? And it becomes a privilege if the Moors was given anything, right? If they had a Moorish army in 1861 that would receive through statutory law some type of recognition and funding, then what does that have to say about those individuals? And where were they? And what did they do for the rest of the nation, being that we were still under Reconstruction? What occurred? What was the outcome of that? That's my question to you, if you know the answer to that. I didn't hear you.
Also, the state, they kept taking it, and then they gave them territory, which is not right, and it's not anyway.
Makes no sense.
True. Now, there are variations to the story. I'm just dealing with principle and facts. I have a clue on what you're talking about, but I just want to deal with principle first. The Moors are still getting funding for different things and programs. However, it's not under the term Moorish American or Moorish government. Well, you might have some Moorish Americans getting funded under 501c3. So there's a lot of programs out there where Moors do get funding for, but absolutely in 1861, the Moor Science Temple wasn't started yet. There was no Islamic government, or legally recognized Moorish affiliations at that time. So the Moors that got funding was under the name Moor, is what you got to look at. Because we know all Asiatics are Moors. So when you say the Moors received funding, was it under the name Moor, Moroccan, Moorish American? Like, what are we talking about? Or was it a group of so-called black people who got funding? Because if it's statutory given, then you best believe it's not under the name Moorish. Not in 1861. The only Moroccan funding could have been, well, the Kingdom of Morocco. Because they still had diplomatic relations going on between, Hassan and the U.S. But that's about it. Islam. So we are at the closing of our meeting. We thank everybody for coming out. We'll now turn the meeting back over to Sheikh Shatit, and he's going to do a collection. Then we'll read the additional laws. I'll ask Brother Amari come up and read the additional laws. Islam.
Islam, fam. Additional laws for the Moorish Americans by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Act 1. Grand sheikhs and governors and heads of all temples, all businesses. Each said temple must be approved by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali before acting upon any other members. Let it be finance, property, or any line of life that will cause the members to sacrifice, finance, etc. That would cause the support of any group of any members. Any former officer that violates these laws is subject to be removed from his office under heavy restriction, etc. by the Prophet or the Grand Sheikh. Act 2. All members are to attend their adab meetings and their public meetings promptly. If a member is found standing around on their meeting period, they shall be fined 50 cents on the first case, and on the second case, they will be fined $1, which will go into your emergency fund. If a member is working, his monthly dues will be paid. And if he has money in the bank, he must subscribe for as much as he is able to the Moorish Uplifting Fund, because it takes finance to uplift the nation. Act 3. It is the lawful and divine duty of every good member, if he or she is able in finance, to aid me in saving the nation, and if he does not, he is an enemy to the cause for uplifting his own people, and justice must catch you. Let it be he or she a cause of truth, peace, freedom, and justice, as I have the power invested in my hands, and I will have to enforce the law in order to save the nation. Act 4. All members, while making a public speech, must not use any assertion against the American flag, nor speak radical against the church or any other member of any organized group, because we are to teach love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Act 5. All members must promptly attend their meetings and send their children to Sunday school, and their teacher must confirm himself to the questionnaire. And let every member exercise his 5 senses who is able to do so, because out of your Sunday school becomes guidance of the nation. Act 6. With us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, and note that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7. All members must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and parcel of uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their heart and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This is the divine covenant from your holy prophet Noble Ali through the guidance of his father, God Allah. Islam.
Family, what time it is. And as for the late fees, Grand Sheet YouTube goes in that book right there. So, yes, Grand Sheet goes in that book right here. And that's there, initial your name, please, sir. Sorry, no, wait. I'm sorry. You get it? Yeah, just an issue.
Paper towels here.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna crack.
Where's Elo? Elohim.
Great.
Elo, can you run the paper towels?
Prior to prayer. Closing prayer. Closing prayer.
Are we going to start the closing prayer? Moors, we ask all members to rise, face the east, feet at a 45-degree angle, 2 hands up on the right, 5 on the left. Repeat after Sheikh and Sneaker. Islam. May Allah bind our hearts and minds back to our ancient forefathers, divine creative principles. This we ask in thy holy name, in the 7 Elohims. Amen. Islam. Meeting is closed, Moors.
Great meeting. Come to an end. Islam, thanks for tuning in.
Let me, I need to, you see all the fine sharing.